Hi, I'm Anthony for Sydney Backyard Veggies. We're just going into February now, so I've decided I wanted to give you a garden tour to show you where my veggie pat's at the moment. Now we're moving into late summer, and the heat and the humidity we've been having over the past month has really had an impact on my patch. A lot of my earlier spring veggies that I'd planted have now been replaced by the second and third round plantings. But there are a few bright spots in my patch with my cucumbers and my corn doing really well. And my second plant is tomatoes also flourishing. But also now that we're moving into February, I've also started out my winter garden. I know it's still a bit early, but I've started planting my first broccolis and my first cauliflowers in my patch. So come and join me while I walk you through where my patch is at and show you how I'm coping with the heat and the humidity at the moment. So I'm over here at my main garden bed. This is the west facing bed. And in the front of the patch, I've planted out my last planting of sweet corn. And I've got 6 rows in here, and I've planted the plants at about 30 centimeters apart in rows 60 to 70 meters apart. Now, there's actually 3 different plantings going on in here. I've got the larger plants that you see, the plants that I planted in mid-December, direct seeded, and because of these seeds were quite old, I did a second planting, and so we have a few different ages, about 2 weeks apart, but they should catch up to each other. In the front here, I planted my last planting of corn. This was planted about 4 weeks after the first one, so these was planted as seedlings, and these were planted in the old tomato patch that we had over here. The Dankias and the Thunders, they were quite good producers, but as we moved into late December, early January, the fruit flies came through and actually decimated the whole crop, but that was fine. I moved them on, put a new corn in. They're looking really, really good. They've had their first round of nitrogen fertilizer. The back ones have been healed, but these front ones here will need to be healed, and I might add a second round of fertilizer on them just to really get them going. Expecting a harvest from this patch in about late March, so by that time I would have my cabbages and cauliflower seedlings, which I'm looking at planting in this patch. So I'm probably going to get 3 or 4 rows of cabbages and the same amount of broccoli just over in the back there. Coming across from the corn patch, I have my second planting of cucumbers. Now these were planted as seedlings in early December. There were 20 plants in total. This variety is called Craig. It's another one of those greenhouse varieties which only puts out female flowers. Now, they were doing great till about 3 weeks ago, and then I've had a real serious issue with thrips and still fighting off powdery mildew. So they've probably got another 2 weeks left in them, and look, they did really well. When they were producing, there was an absolute glut of cucumbers, and look, it's about time for them to move on. The heat and humidity really gets to these plants. It really helps them grow fast and produce quick, but they also fall away really quickly as well. I do have a third planting that will replace these ones once these are finished, and I'll show you that a bit later. They're at the back of the garden, so I will be getting rid of these in about 2 weeks time. I feel they're just really dropping fast, and I'll end up planting more of my brassicas in this spot as well. Coming over to the left, and this is my stewing beans. I planted these again. These were planted late November as seedlings, and I've actually harvested a few of these already. There was a lot. There's 5 rows here. This variety is called Italian Romano. They produced a lot. I'm waiting for the second flush of flowers to come through at the moment. They are struggling a bit with spider mites, again, due to the heat and the humidity. But I'm keeping the water on them, expecting a second flush. Flowers are just starting to show at the moment. Expecting to harvest a second flush in about 2 weeks time. And then what I'll do is I'll move this bed on. I might leave it a bit fallow until my new brassica seedlings are here. Now I might even try to plant sugar snap peas in this location here as well, but that's where these are at. Look, they've been good producers. I've got a freezer full of stewing beans, so happy with how they performed this time. So coming over to the back half of my main patch. And over here where I previously had my cherry tomatoes grown, I've got my third and final planting of cucumbers. Now this variety is called Casib, and I direct seeded these at the start of January, actually, just after New Year's Day. And you know, it's been nearly 5 weeks now since they were planted, and these are almost ready to start flowering. They are starting to show their first flowers, which is great. And I've been training them onto this string trellis, and they've been doing absolutely amazing. Now they do look a bit wilted now, but they've been watered, so just a really hot day today. Expecting these to start producing in about 2 weeks time, which will be perfect to take over the production from that second planting, which would have been pulled out by then. Just making sure I stay on top of any of the thrip damage and powdery mildew. I spray with a bit of pyrethrum and copper oxychloride just to deal with both of those pests. Expecting these to produce till late March, early April. I do need to add the side dressing of fertilizer. I will be adding chicken manure pellets and a little bit of potash to each of the plants. But really happy with how they're looking. Yeah, look, I didn't even realize they had flowers. I'll be expecting to harvest these. I reckon 2 weeks, I'll be getting fruit off these. Coming over just behind the cucumbers, was my first planting of capsicums. I've got 8 in this location, and this variety is called Harley. Now, these were doing great guns at the start of the year, all the way up to November. I had some really big capsicums I was picking off them, but as with all my tomatoes and my capsicums, fruit flies are a real issue in my patch. And for the last 6 weeks, I've been removing damaged fruit and feeding them to the chickens. What I'm going to do is, I have in past experience, if I keep these plants going on to March, they'll take me outside the fruit fly strike window. So I will expect to start harvesting, clean fruit then. What I'm doing at the moment is coming through, taking away all that damaged fruit, and I'm actually going to add some fertilizer to these. I'll be adding a bit of superphosphate, a little bit of potash, and a handful of chicken manure pellets. I'm going to keep on top of taking off all this rubbish fruit that's been damaged. I'm going to give it a last little prune because I seem to be whipping around a bit, and hopefully I can get a decent harvest of them in that late autumn period between March, April, until which time I will rip them out and start planting winter greens in this spot. Coming across, and this is my bean patch. Now, again, the beans are still doing okay. Spider mites is a real issue in my patch. So a lot of my beans now, especially with this humidity, are really struggling with spider mites. There is still a fair few beans in here, which I will come through and harvest. Expecting these to be cleared in about 3 weeks time. I'm not expecting a second flush of beans on these ones, so I'll come through and harvest these, and again get this bed ready for more, probably looking at more broccoli in this spot here. And coming across next to the beans, this is my jalapeno patch. Still doing great. I've got 10 plants here. The variety is called Jedi. If you're looking for a big jalapeno that produces well, this is the one for you. Again, the fruit flies have gone into these. Not as bad as the capsicums, but if I do a harvest, I'll probably end up throwing about 30% of the fruit out. But that's okay. I'm expecting these to start kicking back in. I've been harvesting these every 2 weeks, and I've got some really big fruit in there at the moment, which I will come through and harvest again. I have in the past, last year, had these produce all the way to April, May, and I'm going to try a little experiment this year. I'm actually going to keep one of the rows in and see if I could overwinter it in this spot and get it to produce early in October, so that I can continue pickling my jalapenos. Now, I make a lot of cowboy candy out of this, and I have my year's worth stored inside my house, which is great. But I'm looking to see if I can keep the 5 plants and see if I can keep them producing all the way till next year, and I'll keep you posted on how I go with that. So coming over to the end of the main bed, and this is my second planting of capsicums. Again, similar to the first ones, these are Harley. There's 10 plants in this plot. Again, we're struggling with spider mites, we're struggling with fruit flies. We had a bit of an aphid infestation, and I actually appears to be most of the aphids have been treated. I had to treat them about 3 weeks ago, and it seems most of them are cleared. There are some flowers showing up, but I'm getting a lot of smaller fruit still. So to try to grow that fruit more for March, April, I'm going to add more fertilizer and clean them up and give them a prune, get rid of all that damaged fruit, and just see how I go. I may sacrifice these ones and pull them out as my winter seedlings come online, and I might make this space available for more broccoli as well. And while I'm here, just a quick update on my avocado. Now, avocado's absolutely exploded. Even with all the flowers that we had in early spring, I think a lot of big winds came through, and all I've got is just the one avocado. If you could just see that right there, that's the only avocado I can see that's actually produced. I'm gonna do a big prune on it this year. Gonna bring down the height, clear out the bottom canopy of the plant. Give it one more go. Look, I mean, this is second year we have got next to no fruit off it. We give it one more go. If I'm still struggling to get a fruit next year, I might reconsider whether this avocado is right for my patch, but it's taken over a big portion of that corner of the garden, and I'd like to see some benefits out of it. When I come across avocado, still doing okay. There is a fair bit of fruit showing. I might bring you around to show you the fruit. There you go. These are almost ready to harvest. I have been keeping them a bit of copper sprays to keep a bit of that disease off the skin, but generally speaking they're looking alright. Probably got about 15 avocado mangoes on it. Needs a prune. It's not the ideal shape that I'm looking for, but happy it's producing. So now I'm over at my eggplant patch, and this is a Monacaza, this variety. I planted this out in early September. Again, been struggling a lot with aphids and spider mites. They're looking okay now. I think I've cleaned them up. They are struggling a bit, so I'm going to come through, give them a bit of a prune, add fertilizer, and see if I can get them going again. But I personally think they're a bit too far gone, but there is some nice new growth showing, some new flowers, so I'm hoping I could bring them back. But look, it's been a hard year for eggplants, funny enough, but I did have a bit of a glut earlier on, but as the temperature warmed up and the humidity kicked in, yeah, it was a real struggle. But I'm bringing you across to my second plant of tomatoes. Now these tomatoes are looking really, really good. Planted these out in late December, and now I've got fruit on them. I am hoping that by the time I start harvesting these will be outside the fruit fly strike time, so I'm hoping to start harvesting them in March. There is a lot of fruit. I've got two varieties. I've got my ox hearts, and I've got an indeterminate Roma variety. 10 plants in total. Doing really well, keeping the water up to them and pruning. Heaps of flowers. I'm going to add a bit more fertilizer to them, but I am expecting start harvest in about late March, the first of the fruit. So really happy with that. But this is my last plant of tomato now for the season. I've made a lot of sauces out of the other tomatoes I planted in September, and this will be here more for fresh eating in that late autumn period. So now I'm over at my north facing beds, and at the moment everything here that was planted here previously has finished. I had borlotti beans planted at the end location there next to the chicken pen, and I had zucchinis just planted here in front. I've now put out a cage, a fence in for the chickens, and the idea here is I'm letting the chickens in for a few days to really clear these beds. There was a lot of weeds and a lot of muck, and I like to do this before every major planting. That way I just get the chickens in there, dig up the soil, eat the weeds, eat any of the insects, give them a bit of something to do, but at the same time just dig over that soil. Going to be planting silver beet over in the back, lettuce, and more salad greens at the front, so rocket and a bit of radish and coriander. I might let the chickens run through here for another maybe 2 weeks or so, just waiting for that temperature, the heat of the late summer to go past, and see if I can start my winter greens early in this spot. Coming over, this was where I had my old pumpkin patch. Now I harvested this about a week ago, and I will put up a video on that harvest later. But I am planting more broccoli in this spot. It was quite clear of weeds. I've dug over the soil and I've added horse manure, and I'll be planting them this afternoon. It's just really hot at the moment. I can't get the seedlings in, but the intent is I will have broccoli growing here in about a week's time, and I'll be harvesting them in late March. So over at my south facing beds, and over the last 2 weeks I've started planting brassicas here. So in this spot here I've got cauliflower, and just further ahead, which I'll take you over and show you, that's my broccoli patch. Now these cauliflowers, the variety here is called Serenity. It's very, very hot today, and I happen to put a bit of extra shade. I might actually go and put some shade cloth over, but the plants are doing fine. Once I get over this heat, they will really perform well. I've got 21 plants in this spot, and coming over to my broccoli, I've got 18 broccolis in this spot, and this variety here is called Aurora. They've been in the ground for about 3 weeks and they are starting to put on a lot of growth. Issues with planting, although I plant a lot of brassicas this early, what you need to make sure is you stay on top of pests and keep them well watered and shaded until you get that harshness of the summer sun out of the way. So I'm going to have to keep monitoring this for another 2 or 3 weeks until such time as we get into late February. It should start the weather should start becoming more mild. And coming across, this is my last planting of borlotti beans. I've got 5 rows here. This variety is called Red Rooster. It should be producing, it's just starting to flower at the moment, and I should be harvesting off this in about 8 weeks time. So I'm really looking forward to clearing this bed, and I'll be planting broad beans pretty much down this whole row here, so looking forward to it. Before I move off from here, I just want to quickly show you my mandarin tree. This is my imperial mandarin. It's got a lot of fruit in it this year. Really happy with how it's forming. There are a few stink bugs, as you can see just right there. I will spray this. I don't use the vacuum treatment. The trees are too big for that and I haven't got time for it. So I use pyrethrum and I use white oil, and it knocks them all out. Don't be afraid to spray for stink bugs. You don't need to physically remove them, but I will pick that one off. And coming across, I just wanted to show you my persimmon. This one here is the Fuyu persimmon, just starting to yellow, starting to ripen now. I've got probably 15 pieces of fruit on here, which is great. I do get a lot of fruit drops, so I've got a few fruit that drop there. That's fine. Should be harvesting them in the next month, so really happy with that. And to finish off my tour, I'm over at my lemon tree. Now this lemon tree is a Eureka lemon. It's huge. I'm talking it's about 4.5 meters high and probably 3 meters in a canopy diameter. Getting heaps of fruit. Having to stay on top of the stink bugs, which I've been controlling through sprays. I am aiming to prune this tree back. It's just getting a bit too big. Clear it up, open up the center of the plant, and just bring down the height. It's just too big. It's starting to get harder to pick. I'm also starting just on the left here my next compost pile. I've been composting horse manure, but now I've run out of horse manure to compost, so I'm going to compost a lot of that trash in the chicken pen is going to come through here. I've been collecting green waste, and that's going to go in there. I'm going to compost that, and I'll put that on the winter guard. I do have a lot of weeding to do. It's just that's the thing with rain. Rain and humidity really get the weeds going. So what are my garden plans for the month of February? What I'm planning to do is just continue growing out the last of my summer veggies. I'm really looking at focusing on my corn, my last plant of cucumbers, and actually trying to see if I can do around my jalapenos and capsicums, see if I can bring them up in eggplant, see if I really can get them going and extend their harvest into April and May. My tomatoes, I'm going to continue pruning the tomatoes and making sure I look after them, adding that additional fertilizer, keep them going. For my winter garden, I'm really starting to focus this month on starting a lot more of my winter seedlings. I'm going to start my next round of cauliflowers and broccoli seedlings, but I'm also going to start my cabbages, my wombox, and my purple cabbage and purple cauliflower as well. So I'm going to have a bit of a variety growing through my patch this year. On my northern side, I'm going to let the chickens run through that patch for another 2 weeks or so, and then I will start planting my winter greens. I'll be looking at planting rockets, silver beet, cos lettuce, and coriander. I'm looking at trying to start a herb garden closer to my house, so I will go through a video on how I start my herb garden. I'm going to rip out some more lawn over there and start the garden bed there. I'm going to start composting the chicken run waste, so all my lawn clippings and a lot that I've been collecting in the chicken run, I'll be composting that. But generally speaking, just hoping that it will start cooling down a bit really. It's just really difficult to grow stuff in such hot weather. I find my best growing periods are in autumn and spring. I find the dead of winter and middle of summer are the most challenging times to grow. But look, there is rewards in there if you start early. I'm hoping to harvest those broccolis and broccoli at the start of March, and the cauliflowers over there in the southern side by mid-April. But besides that, look, really happy to be out in the garden. Just try to find times in the early morning, late afternoon to work in there rather than the heat of the day. But yeah, looking forward to winter. It's just a bit too hot to be in the patch. So thank you very much everyone for watching my garden tour. I really appreciate all the support. I hope your garden does as well as mine does in these really hot days. And I hope that your winter garden is as productive as your summer garden.